Welcome to the GlideFast and DTech Apps webinar, Unlocking Seamless ServiceNow Document Automation with DTech Apps and GlideFast. I'm your host, Brett Carl, VP of Solutions and Alliances. Here with me, I've got John Martin, VP of DTech Apps, and David Sandberg, Solution Consultant of DTech Apps. John, if you'd like to tell us a little bit more about yourself, that'd be great.
Hey everybody, John Martin, DTech Apps. We are the ServiceNow product division of Discover Technologies, which is a large services organization that focuses mainly on Microsoft and AWS. Been with them for 13 years, started the ServiceNow relationship 5 years ago, where we started building certified apps on the store that will go enterprise-wide within an organization. And you'll see one of those applications today. Thank you for joining.
Good morning, good afternoon. David Sandberg, Solution Consultant at DTech Apps. Been here for about a year and have been in the ServiceNow ecosystem since the end of 2020, and I'll be walking you through the DTech product today.
All right. Thank you both. And again, Brett Carl, VP of Solutions Alliances. I lead all of our partnerships here at GlideFast and all of our solution offerings, and looking forward to giving you a glimpse into what GlideFast can offer, as well as what DTech Apps can offer. Before we get into DTech, I want to talk a little bit about GlideFast Consulting. We are an Elite ServiceNow Partner of consulting and implementation, as well as a platform partner for the build line. We have 13 product line achievements. Combined as an organization, we have over 600 expert consultants, and with that, over 4,100 ServiceNow certifications, which makes us the largest ServiceNow pure play elite partner based on those certifications alone. We pride ourselves in our 3.5 and higher CSAT score, and over 3,000 successful projects that we've implemented in the roughly 8 or 9 years that we've been established as a organization for ServiceNow partnership. As far as our capabilities are concerned, we run the gambit as far as ServiceNow products, everything from strategic portfolio management, GRC, SecOps, ITOM, HR, CRM, and CSM, as well as a UX UI design studio where we focus on human-centered design. And inside of all those products, we offer integration support, implementations, app development, remote services, whether it be managed services, short-term or long-term, as well as training with our certified training department and change enablement that we have from our advisor services practice. Just a brief view of our different practice areas. We do have 8 validated practices with ServiceNow, 13 PLAs that parlays into over 8 of the validated practices with ITSM, HR, ITOM visibility, SAM, CSM, and security incident response. So just know that we are established practices where we have dozens, if not hundreds of people with different certifications and have had dozens, if not hundreds of successful implementations across the product space. GlideFast is a global organization where we have delivery centers in Canada, Mexico, US, United Kingdom, and India, with our main offices being in the US of Boston, Cincinnati, Ohio, and Toronto. And lastly, what sets us apart from other partners? We have a 92% voluntary retention rate. So we want to work with the best so that we can deliver the best with our customers. And mind you, we have over 800 of those. And looking at customers that come back from repeatable process and repeatable work, we have over 185 customers that have been with us for 3+ years. And that number is climbing every single day. One of the biggest things that we do to maintain that voluntary retention is hiring the best and also reinvesting to make people better with our own Path to Architect program, Share the Wealth for internal sharing of information, our own council where we have experts that have open office hours, and then even a yearly company retreat with called GlideFest. We host every year or so to basically promote our team bonding and team building and reinvestment in our group. So for now, I'd like to pass it actually over to DTech Apps to talk about the DocIntegrator and the form automation process. Pass it over to John now.
Thanks, Brett. So as Brett was saying, with our partnership with GlideFast, between DTech Apps and GlideFast, we offer a full range of services, consulting, implementation, application development, really making sure that on your ServiceNow journey, you're maximizing your investment in what ServiceNow provides to your organization. Hence, our creation of some products. So back in 2017, 2018, ServiceNow came to us and asked us to create an enterprise action tracking, correspondence management, task management system that would be deployed within the federal government in a way that isn't built with workflow. It's ad hoc. So think of, instead of new mail, you hit new task, you start putting the people you want to send it to, and then you hit submit with the attachments and everything, and it fires off to the people that you sent it to, and then they can sub it down as well. So when workflow doesn't work and you need to go outside it, normally sending an email, this is where you plug Tasker into one of your ServiceNow applications to ensure people stay inside ServiceNow. Through that process of building that, the organizations that we work with wanted to create documents at the end. ServiceNow has a fantastic ability to take data from tables and present that into a PDF, but they do not do it with Word and PowerPoint. Typically, SPM is now shipping with PowerPoint export with data fields, but normally most of the other tools don't do it. So our agencies wanted to present to Word, edit the document, make sure it looked good, add some pictures before they PDF'd it and send it off for signature. So that's our DocIntegrator product, which is what we're going to show you today. A piece of functionality within DocIntegrator is DocFlow, which you'll see. Next slide, please, Brett. What we're doing with automation, so these are the three tools: Tasker, DocIntegrator, DocGenerator. DocGenerator is our records producer. It's what grabs the data and pushes it into a PDF, or you can use ServiceNow out of the box just for PDF. DocGen gets you your PowerPoints and your Word documents. Next slide, Brett. So here's what drove us to add on to our DocIntegrator product and look at how forms are built today. We had a customer of ours who spent 18 months building out a form, and it ultimately failed in user acceptance. They didn't like the way the screens looked. The users didn't really want to use it. It didn't print the way they wanted to do it. So after 18 months and a few million, they canceled the project. We then spoke with one of our ServiceNow customers, asked them if they've automated any applications. They said, yeah, we've built a couple on App Engines. One of the forms took us about 12 months. We use native ServiceNow because that's what we thought we wanted to do. But then we looked at it and said, we've got 200 more forms to do. We want to manage 200 apps. And we kind of sat back and took a pause for a minute. So that was very interesting to us. So we looked at what we were doing and said, you know what? I think we can do, or we think we can change the paradigm of how forms are created inside an organization. We grabbed a form from one of our clients, said, give us a couple weeks. And, from that, we actually built out 12 more forms and automated them within their enterprise in less than a month. So next slide, please. And that's the sexy stuff that we're going to show you today. So on the right-hand side of the screen is the UI that you'd see inside ServiceNow application, no matter what it is, whether it's your CSM, whether it's SPM, whether it's ITSM, or whether it's FSM, whatever it is, this field could show up when you need to work on a document. So what we've done to changing the paradigm is, instead of creating an application that looks like the form, we actually just download and consume the PDF document. And then we map each block into the data that's inside ServiceNow. So now we auto-populate the document with all the information that we can gather from any system that we can connect to. Stops that wonderful world of forgetting the last letter inside a serial number, or forgetting something, or misspelling your email address because you forgot a dot. All that information is done for you. So our goal is to replace those highly customized applications that have to be managed with every upgrade and update. We just want you to manage your forms and do that in one spot. So that's what you're going to see today in the demonstration. Next slide, Brett. And that's the demo. Let's get into it, Mr. Sandberg.
Thank you, John. So as mentioned, we're going to talk about DocFlow, which is really DocIntegrator enhanced. And we're going to start with a employee auto-populating a form, and most importantly, routing for approval and signature. And where we see organizations struggle is they have pre-built custom-built solutions or manual processes to accomplish one form, as John was talking about, we provide a framework to cover any and all forms. So what we're looking at right now is the Employee Center Pro Portal. This is just one way to trigger this doc flow process. Later, we'll also show another portal and a fulfiller or an HR agent operating with inside their experience. So here, we're an employee coming into a portal, and most employees come in here for a few different things: to make any type of request or access knowledge articles such as FAQs. So for the purpose of today's demo, we're an employee, a current employee, and we need access to another solution, another system within our tech stack. What you'll notice here is, as a solution consultant, full-time solution consultant, part-time form automator, I've automated over 30 forms within my environment within the last few months. And this is because we don't create a new app for each form. We provide a framework to automate any and all forms. So for starts, again, the system access request. For some of those on the line, this might be also known as the DD2875. Since everyone here is most likely familiar with ServiceNow, we're prompted with a typical form. So this is highly configurable based on your operations. So in this case, who this is for and what form we specifically want filled out. So the two things that are going to happen is, as John mentioned a little while ago, we can auto-populate the form. So as long as the data lives in ServiceNow somewhere, maybe the user table, right, the user profile, we can take that data and auto-populate it into the form for a few different reasons. So one, it saves time, and also you don't have to worry about hard keying in, right, the wrong address or employee ID. And now, most importantly, within forms automation, it's all about the form itself. So how can it be routed to the appropriate individuals or groups in order to approve? And typically, this involves signatures of some sort. So once we fire this off, we'll see how easy it is for this end user to actually sign this form as the first step and routing to the next individuals or groups in that process. So what we're looking at right now is the single pane of glass for any approver in terms of how to navigate. If you are a ServiceNow heavy user, we access the application or module just like any and all of the ServiceNow applications, since we are a certified app on the App Store. And if you are let's say an executive that is not living and breathing in ServiceNow, you'll receive an email with a hyperlink taking you directly into the task at hand. But we'll talk about this a little later as well. You're not bouncing around between email and this experience, because once you're in, you see everything on your to-do list. So on the left side, these are all of the different forms that I have to sign. Again, we provide a framework to automate any and all forms. In terms of the chain of command, commonly we see emails being routed around with attachments. A few things: it's not always clear who has to perform the approval and signature, and also what the due date is. And lastly, at DTech Apps, we are heavily entrenched within both ServiceNow and Microsoft. So we'll talk about how the documents themselves live in SharePoint. We also can communicate via Teams as well. I'm sure everyone on the call has been in the situation where you have a few-page form with 5 pages of instructions. The way that we handle this is you can tailor-make the instructions per person or group, right? So per essentially route, per line item, so that you're not going up and down between the form and the document, or having to print out the document and have it next to you. Now, the most important part is this document, even though it looks like it lives in ServiceNow, it fully resides in SharePoint. And what that means is we leverage all of the core capabilities, such as co-editing and versioning capabilities that SharePoint offers. One thing to note is we also do support ServiceNow. So for those organizations that are using ServiceNow attachments, we also support those use cases as well. And because this document lives and breathes in SharePoint, all we have to do is bring this document down via Adobe and perform our digital signature. We can support any and all digital signature solutions of choice, but we're going to look at free Adobe Reader and how we can utilize that for our approval. What you'll notice is we bring this down via OneDrive, so we are not actually downloading it to our computer, having to edit, save, and upload. This is all done via OneDrive and SharePoint. So one thing already happened and the other we're about to complete. So this is the pre-existing form. We are not recreating the actual form, which makes that process so much simpler. And the form itself is the UI. So what we're looking at is all of the information that's auto-populated from data within ServiceNow. Again, could be the user profile, HR record, CSM case, and so forth. The other piece is routing for the digital signatures. So in this case, it is routed to Adam. He is the first person within that chain. He can provide his digital signature. So for some organizations that are in more regulated spaces, you have digital signatures with PIV or CACs. Because this is Adobe, we support those use cases as well. One thing that you just notice, which is very pivotal to how we interact with forms, is everything above this signature is now yellowed out. It is non-editable, and that's because that is how the actual form is created. Again, we are taking that pre-existing form. We are not recreating it. And it's really as simple as that. When we fire this off and say it's completed, it will go to the next individual or group in the chain. So we fire this off, and we'll go through a few other examples of how we can accomplish this with different user experiences, but you'll notice that we have all of our other tasks, and we can now just go down this list like a punch list.
Is this included in some particular product within ServiceNow, or is it an additional app that requires specific product license on the instance?
Yep, so I can take that one. So DocIntegrator is the name of the application created by DTech Apps. So it's a certified app on the App Store, but it is not created by ServiceNow, if that makes sense. So that's the app. DocFlow is specific functionality that we're covering today, which is the forms automation component. So that comes with DocIntegrator. So it is one suite, if you will. And if anyone else on the DTech side wants to add, feel free.
Which ServiceNow application does this work with? Is it ITSM? Is it HR, SPM?
Perfect segue to part 3. So we're going to take this perspective from another portal that some people on the call might be more familiar with. The next part, we're going to be working within HRSD. To answer that question, it can be put into any and all applications. So that's CSM, HR, incident right within ITSM, even custom applications. And it functions also in platform, portal, and workspace. So we're in portal at the moment. We're going to go into platform, and it also functions with workspace.
And David, just further to that, think of this application, DocIntegrator, as just another application that ServiceNow has. So we inherit everything we built on App Engine. We can plug into any application that is ServiceNow or any scoped app that you may have built. So we are a certified app on the store. We inherit all the security functionality of, in the government of FedRAMP, FedRAMP High. We're installed in the intelligence community. So all those certifications that ServiceNow passes on, we have to pass as well. So the wonderful thing about ServiceNow is it's both on-prem and cloud. So we can be a hybrid, just like your SharePoint environments can be on-prem and cloud. We can support those as well. So we're just like ServiceNow. Just think of us as one more app in their quiver of arrows.
Perfect. So for some that are on this call, they might be more familiar with that end user portal we just had, which is the Employee Center Pro, more of the modern look and feel. Again, we can function anywhere in the application. So right now we're looking at the standard SP, ServiceNow Service Portal. Just like before, any employee comes in making requests, checking knowledge articles, right, for self-help. We can always proceed through this catalog and find what we need, or just do a basic search for our ease. What we're prompted with is the certification of training, also known as SF-182 form, that some of you on this call might be familiar with. So when someone completes training, they got to go through a formal process, and we will see how, one, again, the form can be auto-populated with data for that person, making their lives easier, and also routed to the appropriate parties, such as supervisor and manager. So we're going to fire this off for Able and select the form of our choosing. So again, just like before, once we click Submit, once we fire this off, it will go to that single pane of glass for any approver that they need to do, right? Tailored to the person logged in, and they can now perform their signatures. So we'll fire that off, and as we're going to be covering this part, you'll see that task comes into our queue. So this is for Able, that SF-182 or certification of training form. Just to briefly go over what we saw before, right? This is our to-do list. We have the chain of command with the integration to Teams and making our lives much easier with tailored custom instructions per step. The first thing you probably notice is there's a lot of data that is already auto-populated, again, taken directly from a table within ServiceNow. So if the data already exists, why need to hard punch and hard key it in again? So now this is passed to the supervisor. That's how this specific form is routed. So it comes to David. We review it, maybe have to make any edits before sending this off again to the next person. So as you can tell, there's a very simple process to actually review and sign all of these different forms. I was speaking to a customer about a month or two ago, and he's in an executive position where the documents live in SharePoint, which is great. So you leverage all of the version capability, but he was just provided a link to the folder. He would have to find the proper document. It was such a hassle. He actually had to, or reverted back to a secretary printing out the document. He would provide a wet signature with paper and pen. They would scan it back into the system. And in terms of just file management and ease, there's definitely a better way within DocFlow. Right, so within probably about 10 or 15 minutes, we even went pretty slowly and we fired off and accomplished 2 forms. And now the last one, as earlier mentioned, is going to be based on the fulfiller side of the house for those very familiar with ServiceNow, whether it could be a IT manager, an HR agent, CSM agent, or anyone within a custom application. So this might be a good time, Brett. Are there any questions we want to cover at this time?
Yeah, we have a couple more that came in. How is the data encrypted for PII information that's entered into the form, and how is the access to the information restricted?
Sure. So I could take the first pass on that. So the data always lives in SharePoint, so it leverages all of the capabilities such as locking down PII. Once you enter the information, it's never going into ServiceNow because the document always resides in SharePoint, and that is core capability of what we call DocIntegrator, where again, DocFlow is just an enhancement or an extension of DocIntegrator. I don't know if there's anyone on our side that wants to get more into the technical nitty-gritty.
I mean, just like anything with SharePoint, you can enable their 256-bit keys. The nice thing, the way David is demonstrating this capability today, is the documents in PII can live in SharePoint. However, if you're pulling social security number, etc., from ServiceNow, we're hoping you're doing that from the HRSD module that has encryption on the employee data store and not storing that in open ServiceNow. So we can pull PII from different databases that have an authority to be that PII. But if you're talking about pure SharePoint with the data that you enter on a form, the encryption in SharePoint would be enabled, which would then give you the encryption in OneDrive. So as we move the form from SharePoint to your OneDrive folder for signature and then move it back to SharePoint, it has leveraged the encryption across the entire process. Hopefully that answered the question. And if you need deeper answers, we'd love to get on the phone call with you.
Yeah, one thing to add to that for HR specifically, you would probably live within the HR profile where that's even more locked down than the standard user profile where based on HR roles, different employees like HR agents and managers have access. So much more restricted as well.
Yeah. Do we need any other software for this to work other than ServiceNow? I know you talked about SharePoint, but are there any other mediums that we could leverage?
Sure. So to use ServiceNow attachments instead of SharePoint, you don't need anything. For SharePoint, obviously you would need SharePoint, but there's no other technology required to perform with DocIntegrator or DocFlow. Again, just our applications on certified applications on the ServiceNow store. All right, so we can continue. What we're looking at right now is a typical record within ServiceNow. So we're in platform. Again, this also functions in workspace, so highly versatile. And again, any other app, CSM, custom apps, ITSM, and so forth. So what we're looking at is all of the normal core capabilities that HRSD offers, right? Who is this open for? What type of service is it? So for this example, someone is going to request telework, right? Very common in this post-pandemic world of individuals working from home. So they go through that formal process. These different cases can come in many different ways, right? Could be coming in from the portal, phone, email, chats. So however your organization does it. And the one thing that we're going to talk about is actually DocIntegrator at its core. So right here is our application from DTech Apps, DocIntegrator, and it functions just like all of the other tabs. So from the fulfiller's perspective, it looks like just everything else, right? It fits right within that user experience. From here, we can always upload documents, even search other documents that live in SharePoint, even your own Teams and Outlook. But for the purpose of this demo, what we're going to do is have this person, right, formally apply for telework. All we have to do from this HR agent's perspective is click this one button, and then we'll see where this document appears and how we can even interact with it, not just in the DocFlow user experience that we saw before, but also within this HR case. So we fire this off, and we'll come back to our DocFlow, right? Single pane of glass. We see the telework is now, the telework form is now open for David. Again, just like before, make this a very easy process. Bring this down with free Adobe Reader and perform our digital signature or any signature that you need depending on your requirements. Just like before, right, all of the information is already filled out, and then whatever else needs to be, right, we can easily fill that out. Again, in the pre-existing form, providing our signature for those that are in the government space. You may have your PIV or CAC for credentialing. Our signature is just supplied, right? We can see when it was. Let's fire this off to the next person. And in a few moments, what we're going to do is go back into that HR case and see how do we also have visibility aside from just within this single pane of glass. So we're going to go back directly into that case. Right, this is the telework case that was created before and the application was fired off. So this is DocIntegrator, right? That's ServiceNow to SharePoint connection. And we can see this is the document, right? It's always the most up to date because, again, the document is always living in SharePoint. We're happy to have a further demonstration about some of the specifics that DocIntegrator offers, but you can expose any and all of the SharePoint data, right? All of those many fields or columns within this experience. You can even move files from folder to folder. So there's a lot of different functionality too that is outside the purview of this specific demo. So from the HR agent's perspective, if for whatever reason we need to see this document, this is the digital signature that was just applied. So everyone is always on the most up-to-date information. We are always working on the same sheet of music. And one thing that we hear quite often is the need to download, edit, and upload documents, and then you're left with, 5 different people editing different versions at the same time and uploading it, and now you have 5 documents that you have to then manage. This is one specific document. It is located in SharePoint, and even you can revert it back to a previous state because we are leveraging the core capabilities that SharePoint offers, such as versioning. So I hope that answers the question from before of, can we work within any application? The answer is absolutely yes. So where we're going to go now to is reporting. There's 2 types. One that most people on this call are probably familiar with, similar to the portal, right? Reporting is a staple that ServiceNow offers, and we even take it a step farther. So we'll talk about that in a few moments. Before moving on, is there anything we wanted to cover on the doc flow specifics? Are there any questions in the chat, Brent?
Yeah, just one question that popped up. I know you were showing government forms. Outside of government, what other use cases can this be applied to?
Yep, great question. So any standard form. For me, I just it's easy to Google and find different government forms, and all I do is download them to my desktop, plug them into our application, and it starts within that doc flow chain of command process. But any form that's standard, and it could even be something that's standard to you, where you're the only company in the world that uses this form, but you want to automate it, you can absolutely do it within DocFlow, and we do not limit the amount of forms. So if you have 5, 10, 100 that you want to automate, by all means, once you start getting the first few down, just roll with the rest.
Yeah, and depending on the industry, again, any kind of industry form can be automated. In legal, it could be a client engagement letter. In hospitality, it could be catering contracts. You name it. If you've got the base form, it can be consumed into DocIntegrator from ServiceNow, and then have the fields mapped to what you need to. If this information lives inside the field ServiceNow, and we can automate that form for you. So it's not limited to the federal government at all.
Yep, great point. And to add one thing to that before moving on is that's also why we did the telework example a few moments ago, because yes, it's a government form, but I have, I think, like 3 or 4 teleworks that I've come across and have automated. So definitely very common within commercial and any regulated body.
And then for anyone who needs to drop early, obviously the presentation will be emailed to you. But if anyone needs to drop early and wants to follow up with a demo, just email info@glidefast.com, info@glidefast.com, and we'll make sure the demo's set up for you.
One more more of a comment that I-9s and offer letters would be good use cases as well. So do you do a lot with onboarding for new employees?
Yes. So again, we can handle any form. Specifically with onboarding, I would think we would tie that into HR. So the forms would be kicked off within, let's say, an HR application, which is probably what is being alluded to, and the documents would live in SharePoint. So we can definitely accommodate that use case. John, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, the big one is vendor onboarding, right? So if you're onboarding new vendors, you have to have forms that are sent out to them for signatures, etc., as well as their information being loaded into your system. So not only employee onboarding, but vendor onboarding.
Yep, that's a great point. So we're working with one customer where they have a vendor portal, and in the past they've been sending around emails with the different forms that have to be signed. So now there's a vendor portal. The form is already partially filled out. They need to provide their signature. They put it back into the system, and it goes through all the formal routing, because one signature is applied on the vendor, right, or the contractor side, but there are 3 or 4 signatures that are required for internal employees within this organization. So it has to get routed through, all the different hoops that are involved.
What about a limitation in forms? And then what's the cost model look like? We don't have to get deep into the cost, but what's that look like for the form limit?
Yeah, that's the wonderful thing about DTech Apps and their partnership with GlideFast. Is not only can GlideFast install and configure all this stuff for you and help you automate hundreds of forms, the price does not change. So this price starts in the commercial space at around $9 a user, and in the government space around $7 a user, and that's per user per month. However, that's unlimited forms. So whether you stand up 2 or 3, or 10 to 20, our price does not change.
Yep, and that's strongly encouraged. Again, we provide that framework as opposed to create a new app for each form. So we strongly encourage organizations to institute as many forms as possible. All right, so let's wrap up with reporting. So what we're looking at right now is probably very familiar with those on the call, standard ServiceNow reporting. So because we are a certified app on their application, on their app store, we have all the core capabilities such as reporting. What we're going to see in a few moments is we actually take it a step farther. So this is usually more for context and visibility, right? Really a high level pulse check. How are we doing across the board? Maybe let's try to be more proactive than reactive. In this case, right, we have a lot of overdue approvals that need to be done, right? How can we try to get ahead of that? What's due upcoming for individuals or groups, and also what's overdue, right? So these are just some examples of what you can have within your application. There's a few ways to think about reports because there's many parties involved. So there's things that you have to sign. So for me, David, these would be routed to me, and I would have to provide my digital signature or any type of signature. And then there's also forms that I own, so other people have to sign on my, on my behalf. Essentially, I sent out forms and they have to sign. So how do I have visibility into that? We can take action. So all these forms, right, are configurable, actionable, and drillable, just like standard ServiceNow dashboards. The difference is usually the actions taken are maybe changing the assigned to or assignment group or priority. We take this again a step further and provide a true management screen. So while you can, again, use those reports, this is designed for someone that truly manages across the board. So you can segment this in different ways, and we can see, right, just kind of taking a perimeter approach, how you want to group it, right, how you want to segment, what's assigned to everyone, to my group, because again, like before, we can assign to individuals or groups. We can easily filter based on different states. Essentially, is it completed? Is it canceled? Is it rejected? Is it pending, as in the second or third person hasn't yet signed? But again, this is all about taking action, so we can see, something is in progress, and how can we easily on the fly, right, as situations change, how can we easily change, who's it assigned to get this done as soon as possible. Right, so now that will be routed to the appropriate person. It will show up in their queue. And again, if they are a heavy ServiceNow user, they would access it just like all the other applications and modules. And for those that are not, most likely executives, they would receive an email, click on that hyperlink, and be prompted into this experience that we're looking at right now. So at the end of the day, why is DocFlow and DocIntegrator valuable? It's because we take the pre-existing form, whatever standard form it is, whether it's government or something internal to your organization, we take that pre-existing form, place it into our engine, and have that routed to the appropriate parties. And this displaces custom-built solutions that are usually very expensive or manual business processes. So with that, I can turn it back over to Brett.
All right. I think there's one more question too, which I think is a great question. It's asking, can GlideFast configure and implement this application? GlideFast is one of our top partners, whether it be enterprise tasking, connection for all your storage needs inside SharePoint, or deploying lots of different forms inside your organization. GlideFast is definitely your go-to to make that happen.
Thank you, John. Thank you, David. All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for your time, and thank you to our guests from DTech Apps, John Martin and David Sandberg. And thank you everyone for joining us.